can a person be a little bit pregnant? And then the other article that I was reading from the Washington Post was saying the right to not have children.
All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, we're going to talk about a BYU professor who is teaching the class about abortion. And in a very, I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's really a very egregious manner where, well, we'll get to that in a minute here. In addition to the audio that we have on this, and I think you'll be a little shocked at what you hear, we have the syllabus to this class. And this is something that I think is really important for parents and students to do. You need to go in and look at the syllabus, all of the syllabi that are available at BYU. If you have a BYU account, you can go in and look at the syllabus of a class. And you're going to get some specifics there, and you can look for certain things. And so aside from the audio that we have here, we've got a copy of the syllabus, and we're going to go through several things that are also concerning in this class. Now, I want to go over why we do this with BYU. It is, again, I'm very supportive of BYU. Most of BYU is fabulous, but there's just no way around being infected by the religion of academia. There's a couple reasons why I do this. Number one is for the students and their parents. I have too many letters, emails, contacts of broken-hearted parents that have had their kids radicalized and that leave the church. Now, that's going to happen no matter what. We're in that environment. We need to adjust and learn how to prepare our kids better because of especially if they're going to go to the university, any university, including BYU, because they're going to get inundated in certain programs, depending on what they're studying. But even outside of that, they're going to run up against these other ideologies. And so that's my greatest concern, is the faith of the students and empathy for the parents on these letters and emails that they have sent me. And the other reason is this is a vanguard for the church. And as I'm trying to remember who said this, but we all live on campus now. In other words, the culture from the religion of academia has entered. That religion of academia has entered mainstream culture in the United States. And so we do all live on campus now. And so when we can look at these issues that are on campus, you're going to have a little bit of a better idea of what is coming down the pike, or we have a framework with which to talk about these issues in the church as well by talking about them at BYU. I hope you understand that element of this and what we're doing here. So I've only gone through this audio once. And so what I want to do this time around is go through the audio. I'm going to play it, stop it, a little commentary here and there, and talk about it. I may cut out a couple pieces here as we go along that may not be part of this episode if there's just some dead space in here. But we'll just run through it, and I'll react to these things and talk about them a little bit. When we're done with the audio on abortion, we will get to the syllabus and talk about what else these students are going through. I don't know. Let's just go through this. Let's go through it. Let's go to the audio here.
But if they're pregnant 15, 16 and pregnant, whoops. And maybe they're like, no, my boyfriend and I chose this. This was our decision. And maybe. But so there's this this misunderstanding that pregnancy is a burden. Especially an unintended pregnancy. Who's going to bear the burden of responsibility here? We've had the conversations. They are pregnant. They need to decide. They need to choose school and work, not her, she. But, where does the burden lie? If it's not just the couple, it's kind of society. And what happens when women are pregnant? They don't have insurance. They don't have...
Okay, you can already see where she's starting to go with this. This is simply opening the door for abortion. That's all she's doing. Right, let me back this up 10 seconds. and listen to it again, and look at what she's starting to set the stage here. And this is, I'm not in her mind, obviously, but come on. I mean, listen to what she's saying here and the way she's going to teach this.
Where does the burden lie? If it's not just the couple, it's kind of society. And what happens when women are pregnant? They don't have insurance. They don't have, like, we're taking part in that, right? Through taxes and support, and they're on Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it needs to be. But more than that, I mean, I'm just not talking the logistics, but pregnancy, at that point that she knows that she conceived, or it's confirmed, or they get the positive pregnancy test, like, that's a capture moment. That's a capture, like, what are the next words? I don't want to be pregnant. I'm not ready for this. I'm still on Accutane. I haven't got clearance from my doctor because I'm on antidepressants. I mean, there's so many considerations there that I think we just jump to, she's pregnant. They're expecting.
So think about so many things to think about. They're pregnant. What are those things that she's going to say that they're thinking about? All right, see, she's going to get in this space here that is between conception and either birth or abortion. All right, so she's going to play in that playground right there between those two ends. And she's going to make some changes here that in language, right? This is very postmodern and what she's going to go through. She's going to dissolve, disintegrate, deconstruct the word pregnant. And you'll see what she does with that.
Let me go back to this. Okay, if you follow my Instagram, it's the walks. Like, I go on these walks. This was Saturday, I need to post about it, but you can't even see what that sticker says. It's on a bridge, walking across this bridge, and it says, I can't even read what it says. Holy cow, that's tiny. Hold on, let me pull it. Okay, need to be unpregnant. I know that. It was this weird, okay, yes, thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay, need to be unpregnant, question.
Okay, a need to be unpregnant. Just keep going.
Mark. And it was this QR code, which you know I QR, and it was for the Plan C pills. I was like, Plan C pills? So this is what the website took me to. A safe at-home abortion is here. Plan C provides up-to-date information.
Okay, a safe at-home abortion. That's what she's going over here, right? She's setting the stage saying, need to be unpregnant. She's reading what it says on there. She's talking about a younger woman, maybe girl that is pregnant, still has acne, on antidepressants. You can see where she's going.
On how people in the U.S. are accessing at-home abortion pill options online. Need to be unpregnant. I've never heard that term before, and it was literally teenage level. Like, if you're on your bike, I mean, I should have put more pictures up, but I was just like, kind of in the bushes. And I was like, who put that sticker there? Who's the intended audience? So this weekend, in addition to general conference, I've been doing a little bit of digging. I'll list this article, but it was this idea of being unpregnant. So, is there an interspace in pregnancy?
Okay. Is there an interspace in pregnancy? Okay. Maybe you're not really pregnant. I mean, you're pregnant, but maybe in a way we can think of it as if you're not pregnant. I mean, what does pregnant really mean? It's like taking the term man or woman and changing it. It's the exact same thing that is being done here. It is a complete deconstruction of language, and to me, anyway, my opinion, an infusion of, I don't need to feel guilty about this. This is something I can do and not worry about it. And I think she confirms that here in just a bit, as I recall.
See, like, this article was diving in to say, if a woman's had unprotected intercourse before she gets a positive pregnancy test, that there's a pill she can take to just ensure. Like, and it's this interspace, like, I don't want to take a pregnancy test because I kind of don't want to know if I actually conceived, but this pill will just take care of it if I did and if I didn't. So this NPR podcast, latest episode, it's called A Little Bit Pregnant.
Okay, here we go on the deconstruction.
I don't know. This is new to me. I'm learning. I haven't done enough research to actually have an opinion. And I don't know that I necessarily will or won't have an opinion. I just want to read and listen to what is being discussed in this. But what are your thoughts? Like, can a person be a little bit pregnant? And then the other article that I was reading from the Washington Post was saying the right to not have children. And
so let me just bring a couple things up here. So these are the two, this is the article and what was it, the podcast with NPR that she was that's her research to bring back to, 95, 99% female class here in women's health at BYU. That's going to be the research on this. It's not, on the other side, it is, hey, let's look at this. Maybe you can just be a little bit pregnant. It's not black and white. And maybe even if it's a few weeks down the road or a month down the road and you're feeling something, right? Maybe something's different, but you don't want to know. You can just take this pill. And that way, whether you are or you aren't, you don't need to worry about it. That's what she said.
And in this Roe versus Wade overturn, it's like if states are limiting what women can and can't access, right? Like yes, no, then I think that we're going to see this creation of this interspace where women are saying, I'm
okay, the creation of this interspace, that's in our heads where it's created. What do you mean the creation of this interspace? It's what is a man? What is a woman? What is a pregnancy?
might be a little bit pregnant, but if I have access to this pill, before I take a pregnancy test, I'm just going to take this pill and decide. I don't know the morals here. I don't know, like I said,
I don't know what the morals are here. See, to me, why is she discussing this then? She doesn't know the morals, and why would you be discussing this with these young women? I think she does know the morals on it, and I think that what she's trying to do is, again, as I said in the last episode, I think she's trying to soften the belly here a little bit. It's kind of like, there's usually going to be a lot of conservative young women and young men there that are students at BYU. The church is supposed to be following doctrine. The church is against abortion except in rare cases. And so how can we talk about this instead? How can we fit within this in a gospel context? You'll see again, like we went over in the gingerbread person class, that this is being put into a gospel context. This is the problem. This is the concern. See, if you're hearing these things, it wouldn't be this nice. But if you're hearing these things at another school, then you understand. You have context. This is all secularism. This is not part of the church. But when you're hearing these things at a church-sponsored school, this is completely against policy. It's against doctrine. Then all of a sudden you're in a position where, the church does believe in these things. This is okay. Abortion's okay. And there is a pretty strong movement in the church now. Just go online to see that how people are becoming more and more pro-choice within the church. Again, this is not a flashpoint that I usually cover, but being that it's at BYU and being that this is taught to young students, college students, and that this is a vanguard for the church, we need to understand that this is what is coming out into the culture. So that means this is what's coming out into the ether of Latter-day Saint culture and online culture where people are influenced. This is the source. and is these not just from BYU, but from the religion of academia. But in BYU, you also have the source of these students being taught, to me, my opinion, indoctrinated into these ideas, and then in the, you know, couched in the gospel principles and context that they try to put them in. And then these students are sent out into the church, right? They go out as adults and they're carrying this with them from BYU into the church and into the church leadership. Let's keep going.
So new to me, I'm like, because it feels like a dichotomous situation, like you are pregnant or you aren't pregnant. Black and white, yes or no. But in this, like a little bit, any thoughts here? Never seen this sticker, I've never heard this term. This article was just barely published.
If you don't know, why are you bringing this up?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't really hear the student speaking, and I probably don't want you to hear the student speaking. So we're just I'm going to talk over this a little bit as it keeps going, because I want you to see that this is the real thing, right? This is actual audio that we are getting from this class. But again, you can see how she's approaching this. It's like a backhanded approach to come into Latter-day Saint individuals with something that is against the gospel, which is against the church. I know this. This is how some of these other ideas are taught there as well.
I know. I was even scared to put it on it, because if I put it on a slide, it's like I have an idea about it. I don't know. That's what IDK. I don't know. But it's been on my mind, and I'm like, push it.
Okay, IDK. I don't know. So here's something else I want to show you. All right. So here's the slide that she put up when she says IDK. I don't know, and you can see here her. This is what she's teaching. This isn't like, I don't know the morals. What do you know? I don't know. Right? And she's completely softening up this space. Interspace in pregnancy, ? IDK, I don't know. This is very backhanded. It's very deceitful to me that you come in with this like this. And I suppose that she feels she has to do this because she is at BYU. She probably wouldn't be saying this if she was at, ASU or U of U or anywhere else that didn't have a faith-based, Hillsdale or some of these others. She can say this in this way. Well, she says this in this way because of where she's at. And how to get to the students with this. This seems to me like indoctrination. It really does. I mean, you're talking about a very touchy subject here. This is, and I'm not saying that abortion or pregnancy or anything else like that shouldn't be talked about at BYU. I think it should. Let's talk about it. It's a university. These are grown-up things. But when you're talking about things that go against the gospel, and you go against doctrine, it's a whole new ball game. Especially, for me on the podcast, it's a whole new ball game when you are going against the doctrine of Christ and you're going against the doctrine of the church. And that's exactly what this does.
Aside, general conference, like make meals for your family, and I'm like obsessively reading on my phone, like a little bit pregnant, listening to this is like, oh, are you re-listening to general conference? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not an NPR podcast at all. Really listening. So
that's odd. That's odd.
The gray areas, like we have to be compassionate rather than judgmental. Because
okay, we've talked about the two tools that are used mostly with this movement. Overall, it is compassion and tolerance. She says we have to be compassionate. See, when you say a blanket statement like that, basically what you're doing is you're taking out all, let's say, commandments. No, compassion is over commandments, or compassion is over truth, or compassion is over God. We have to be compassionate, she says. Well, what about We have to think about the child. We have to think about making the right decision. We have to think about our exaltation. We have to think about family. We have to think about doing the right thing. Seems to me like everything here she's talking about is on the other side of the coin.
The wash of responsibility when a woman thinks she's pregnant, especially if it's unintended. You know, where the mother, wrap your arm like an arm. That's a scary space for some women that they'll experience. And when we just talk about society, it's like, oh, there it is, black or white, she's pregnant or not.
All right, so that's pretty much all we have to the audio. There's a little bit more here, but it's not really, they go off on other topics outside of that. But you have, again, a BYU professor who is softening the belly, deconstructing pregnancy, and trying to change what it means. See, it's kind of like with these things, what you do is if you can change the meaning of the word, then you can get out of the problem or the guilt. If I can change what a woman is, then I can maybe be a woman, right? If I can change what gender means, and eventually, in a lot of places already, what sex, what biological sex means. If I can get rid of those distinctions, then anything goes. Anything goes. And that's a lot like what she's doing here. Now, in addition to this, there is some information here that we have on her syllabus. And this is just as concerning, maybe even for me, probably even more concerning because it's even more ideological and goes along with a lot more of what the religion of academia does. All right, so several different topics here. I've highlighted these if you are on video, if you're on YouTube, to see what we are, the different points that we're going to cover in this syllabus. The first is Finding Mother God Poetry Assignment. This is women's health. So Finding Mother God. Now, the reason that this is important, if you understand the movement inside the church, basically the Heavenly Mother movement, which has as its tenets a few things. One would be, we don't talk about Heavenly Mother enough. Let's talk more about her. Number two would be, Heavenly Mother is as powerful or more powerful than a Heavenly Father, right? The power dynamic is always an issue and is always going to be brought up. And number three would be praying to Heavenly Mother, and what you'll find in some of the BYU classes, especially in women's studies, is when there's a prayer that is offered in class or in a group, what you have is where they don't say Heavenly Father to begin the prayer. There's a few other options that they go with, but again, it's kind of like taking the gingerbread man and breaking that apart, right? It's the same thing with Heavenly Father. They're going to break it apart. And instead of a Heavenly Father, what you do is you just say God, perhaps, or you might say Heavenly Parents, or you might say just Heavenly Mother. And that goes on there. And you have to ask yourself, where are these students learning this? Where is this coming from? And if you think it's not happening at BYU, I don't know what to tell you. I think that's very naive. Again, this isn't widespread. This is in very specific areas where you're going to find this, especially in some of the family life science and some of the social sciences, and of course, especially in women's studies. So Finding Mother God Poetry. Here's what it says. Students will spend the first month and a half of class reading a collection of poems in a book entitled Finding Mother God by Carol Lynn Pearson. Now, some of you are going to know who Carol Lynn Pearson is. Carol Lynn Pearson, I want to make a note here before I go into this. Carol Lynn Pearson has done some pretty amazing things in her life and made some huge sacrifices. And I want that to be clear, right? I'm not talking about her character. I'm talking about what she talks about and who she's become, where she's kind of this icon of that Heavenly Mother movement. She also believes that polygamy was not sanctioned by God, and that it was basically Joseph Smith and others were a bunch of men that couldn't control themselves and wanted to institutionalize plural marriage. And plenty of other things. She has on her website, you get this idea, loving kindness is my religion. Again, compassion, tolerance, those are important things, but it's when you lift that above God, there's a problem. And the other thing she believes in is question authority, of course, and what that really is, I mean, she's referring to the church more than anything, I would suggest, because that's what she writes about. She has a book out here that we're talking about here, Finding Mother God, and you find a few things here. Our Mother and Her Dove. There's a movement in the church where, the sign of the dove, where the Holy Ghost is a woman and maybe Heavenly Mother. Certainly not doctrine of the church. A matriarchal blessing. You kind of get the idea of what she writes about and what she talks about. So that's the first point. The second point here that they bring up here is Lifelong Learners of Anti-Racism book. And look, again, this is women's health. It's anti-racism and critical social justice. It is in everything. It infiltrates everything. And then everything is filtered through it. So we've already talked about abortion and how she was talking about that. We've now got Heavenly Mother in here, and the way that Carolyn Pearson talks about it and others, you get the idea of what they're talking about there. Now you've got anti-racism. And here's what it says. It says, students will select one of the following books to read during the month of October. I'm Still Here by Austin Channing Brown. I haven't read that one. White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. You know how I describe that book, White Fragility? It's like ideological cutting. The girls that cut themselves, and because it's kind of like this disdain and self-hatred a little bit that is there, and they're kind of manifesting that. It's a tough thing to go through. But this is kind of what that's like in an ideological sense. It's cutting your heart. It's cutting your spirit. And it's saying, I am not good. I'm sorry. It's horrific. It's a horrible book. Horrible book. The next book is Me and White Supremacy. And lastly, Black Fatigue. So here in the women's health class, they are going over these Marxian tenet-based anti-racism books. And for those of you that are going to push back on that, I'm sorry. I could give you 1,000 references to how all of these individuals here, Austin Channing Brown, Robin DiAngelo, Layla Saad, and Mary Frances Winters, and of course the biggest icon of all being Ibram Kendi, are all pulling from Marxian tenets very strongly, not like mistakenly. It's outright pulling from those tenets. And it's anti-gospel. It is anti-doctrine of Christ. And here it is again, right here in your women's health class. She says, anti-racism book discussions will be held in class on Thursday. I would have loved to have had the audio on that one. Quick things here, a couple things. They've got a champion of women's project. Who are the people who have influenced you as it relates to women's health, rights, education, equality? Let's say that for what it really is, which is equity, and advocacy. And let's say what that really is, which is activism. So the Champions of Women Project are who are the activists that have, now they might bring up some people, they might even put like an Emma Smith in here and other, I can't think of her name from the Relief Society. that came up with the I think she was the editor of the Exponent early on, and others. But you know, you're going to see a certain type of person here as these champions and suggestions on who you might write about. It's indoctrination is what this is. So again, just another example here of, in certain parts of campus at BYU, of what is being taught, right? It is anti-gospel subjects. It is completely against the doctrine of the church. And it is all the same thing. It's all the religion of academia that infiltrates these spaces. This, by the way, was Health 450, Women's Health. And that is this current semester right now. That is the fall 2022 class, is where we see that syllabus and the audio from. This is about awareness. This is about knowing what is there. And it's about discussing these issues that are not just at BYU, but are coming out into the church. We need to be able to get ahead of this, and we need to be educated. We need to understand what's happening and how this ideology operates, and what we can do to strengthen our faith and strengthen the faiths of our families, of our kids, grandkids, and help people not to participate in the spiral of silence. Thanks for listening.